Good morning everyone. So in the previous class we have understood about requirement elicitation. So today we will discuss about the second part, which is analysis. Okay. So basically the name itself says you have to analyze. While doing one kind of project, right? We have to analyze whether with respect to what completeness, with respect to consistency, with respect to unambiguity. It is clarity, you may say. Unambiguity, it should be unambiguous, right? And it should be a complete one. So basically these are some of the things so that need to be discussed under one particular section that is referred to as analysis. That's why this module name has been given as requirement elicitation and analysis. Okay, so basically what exactly analysis is, if we look into that, so it results what exactly it results in a model of the system that aims to be correct, complete, consistent and unambiguous, right? So what exactly the meaning of this analysis, if we deeply look into that? So it results in a model. So this is very important. Here in the later part of this session, right, we will discuss about analysis model. So there we are able to discuss about functional model, object model, all these things that will come under one particular section, which we will categorize it as, which we will call it as analysis model. Okay, so it's nothing but what? It's a model. It results in a model, right? So what exactly it results in? A model of the system. System is a group of components which accomplish to perform a common task, right? That we have called it as a system that aims to be. What? Correct. It should be correct, right? It should be correct, and it should be a complete system, not an incomplete one. It should be complete, right? It should be a complete model, and it should be consistent. If you change the environment, it should work, and it must be unambiguous. There should exist only one solution. You should not have multiple solutions. That is why we are able to call this as unambiguous. Ambiguity means there is a dilemma, right? So we are not sure about what the solution. So here there should be clarity. Clarity means whichever the solution that you have got right is correct. There is no alternative solution that may exist for the given particular problem. That is why we are able to do analysis. That is why we are able to have one particular phase in your software engineering, right? So that is in the waterfall model, which we are able to call it as requirement analysis. Why we have to say requirement analysis? Requirement is what exactly you need to develop a project, and analysis means what exactly you need, whether it may be a software, whether it may be a hardware, right? Whichever you choose, that must be best. So that is why we are able to say results in a model of the system that actually that aims to be correct, complete, consistent and unambiguous. Okay, so next, if we look into one kind of a system here, so we are able to find one such kind of models here. So basically we are able to we may classify an analysis model, right? So here we are able to discuss much about analysis model. Okay, so analysis model is composed of three components. One as the functional model. Okay, functional model. Second one as the object model. Fine, object model. Third as the dynamic model. Okay, so these are the three particular components which we are able to discuss in kind of analysis model. So it is composed of three individual models. One is functional, second one is object, and third is dynamic. In the functional model, we will discuss only about use cases. we will discuss about what? Use cases here, right? So that we have understood in our activities with respect to what? Requirement elicitation. So there we have discussed, how to identify the use cases, how to refine the use cases. That all these things we have understood in the previous chapter, right? That is called as requirement elicitation. Here also we will discuss about use cases, right? In the functional model we will discuss more about use cases. And then here in the object model, right, we will discuss about what? Class diagrams. We will discuss about class diagrams. What exactly class is means? It's a collection of objects. And what is an object is? It's an instance of a class, right? It's an instance of a class. And in dynamic model, right, we will have one kind of state diagram, state machine diagram. We have state diagram or else state machine diagram. So state machine diagram, right? So it is similar to that of your finite automata. So if we take one particular example, then it is state machine diagram. So states, right? And then on and off, right? Two states. And then here you may find a sequence diagram. Sequence diagram is an example for dynamic model. So we are able to discuss about these two, that is in dynamic model, class diagram with respect to object and use cases with respect to functional models, right? So these are some of the things that we are able to understand in one particular activity, which we are able to call it as analysis model. We are able to call it as analysis model. So analysis model is composed of three individual components. One is the functional model, second one is the object model, third is the dynamic model. Functional model consisting of what? Use cases. And if we take into the consideration here, you may find uses a view of the use cases. Okay, how identifying use cases, and followed by one more thing that we have understood here is refining use cases. If there is any refinement is needed with respect to the use cases, you may address that is in the functional model. Second one, it actually discusses about the object. The object means what? Class. So basically here we are able to make use of methods, that is class diagram, right? And which are all the functions that are being needed for performing such kind of an activity. So that's why we are able to categorize this class diagram that is in the object model. And if we take the third one, that is dynamic, the name itself says dynamic, right? So it is state machine diagram. So it is not, so there we are able to discuss about what? Events. Events means change in the system state, right? One state to another state. So we have state machine diagram, and followed by we have sequence diagram. Sequence diagram means representing the number of classes, and then how exactly the interaction that will take place between that particular thing that is to be addressed by one kind of what? Sequence diagram. Okay, so these are some of the things that we need to discuss, understand, and followed by we will discuss in the analysis model. If we go into the next one, right? So next we have analysis concepts of analysis. So in a similar thing, so as we have seen requirement elicitation concepts, right? So here also we have analysis concepts. So in that one we will discuss three. First one as the analysis object models, and dynamic models. Second one we will discuss about entity, boundary, control objects. And third one we will discuss about generalization, and specialization. Okay, these are the three concepts that we will understand in analysis concepts. So one is the analysis object models and dynamic models. Okay. Second one we will discuss about entity, right? So you have come across this kind of the concept that is in your database management system, right? So there they are able to make use of entity relationship diagram. Entity, it's a real world object, right? We are able to call it as an entity. So there also we are able to discuss about entity, boundary, because every possible object has a boundary, limited boundary, right? So that's why we are able to find a boundary. And control, how much amount of control that a particular object will have. So it is how to control the different objects that are being used in the a particular object or a particular model. So that's why we are supposed to have what? Control objects. Next comes generalization. Generally, by making use of kind of aggregation activity and specialization. What exactly its speciality? So these are some of the things that we need to discuss in the we are able to describe, we are able to understand what exactly the concepts with respect to the analysis. So in that we will understand the very basic one, which we actually we are able to say it as what? One kind of first one, analysis, object models and dynamic models. Right? So dynamic. So the name itself says, right? So analysis, object models. Object means usually instance of a class. Instance of a class. So that we may say it as an object. Okay. And followed by here we are representing one kind of a model. What exactly this? It's a part of analysis model. Analysis object model is a part of your object one kind of analysis model, and it focuses on the individual concepts, right? So it focuses on individual objects, individual concepts that manipulates the system, that are manipulated. Manipulate means changed. Manipulated by the system. Right? So what exactly the analysis object model means? It's nothing but a part of your analysis model, which actually focuses on individual concepts, right? Individual concepts, not the dependent, right? That is dependent concepts. It is individual concepts that are manipulated. Manipulated means changed by the system. So that kind of model we may categorize it as analysis object model. And here we are able to go on what that are manipulated by the system and their relationships, their properties. You may say their properties and their relationships. It actually focuses on individual concepts that are being manipulated by the system, right? And their properties and relationships, because here we need to establish relationships. If we take into the consideration, right, if we take a class diagram, right, so automatically it may have many subclasses, and that are being if you go into the concept of inheritance, right, so basically we have what inheritance means acquiring the properties of superclass to subclass. Then we have a derived class, we have a base class. So in similar way here we are able to find establishing one kind of relationships, how they are related, in what way it has been used for the development of that kind of a model, all these kinds of activities. So this is related to what? Analysis object model. Okay, analysis object model. Fine. Now we will understand something about dynamic models. The name itself says dynamicity. Dynamic means changing, so rapidly changing, and followed by it actually represents the behavioral aspects. It represents the behavioral aspects, right? It focuses on the behavior of the system, how exactly it behaves, and based on it actually go on what? Depicting one kind of the sequence diagram and the state machines. That's why we are able to go on what? Taking one kind of an example here as sequence diagrams, and we have transition diagrams. The name itself says movement, transition diagram. That's why it actually focuses on state, behavior, how exactly the behavior of your system, how it behaves. If I give an integer, how actually it behaves. If I give a character, how exactly it exhibits or it behaves. So I need to study such kind of the characteristic properties. So in that particular context, dynamic model especially focuses on behavioral aspects. That's why it's popular. Behavior. If I want to study the behavior of a system, I need to go on using a dynamic model. Okay, and followed by here state machines that are been state machines, or you may say it as state transition diagrams. It is similar to that of your finite automata, where if you switch on and if you switch off, there may be two states, right? One is off and second one is on. So if you take this, these are the two states. From off, if you go on to the state that is on, so that is 1, and from on you will go to kind of a state which is called 0. If you represent like that, so that we may say it as transition movement. Previously it will be similar to that of your switch, right? On. If you on, then immediately the machine has to turn on, and if you press the red button, then automatically it turns off. So it goes into the final state. Is that clear? So that is why we are able to go with respect to making an activity, and here we are able to represent this as the kind of the final state. Is that clear? So it will go on with respect to owning that different thing, and then immediately it goes with respect to the final state. So this is how we are able to represent one kind of a state transition diagram. And if we look into one kind of sequences means it is especially for representing one kind of the sequences, the simultaneous steps that you are able to find with the given possible entities. So this is how we are able to go on using one kind of the context. So that is why we are able to go on using much of the things with respect to your dynamic system, dynamic model, rather than here object model. So object model will focus on the individual concepts, right, that are manipulated by the system, their properties and their relationships. But now here we are going with the dynamic model, which actually describes or focuses on the behavioral aspects. One is representing as the behavioral aspects, right? Then we will give much of the importance for that particular model itself. Why? Because it is most important, and that is more realistic rather than your object model. Okay, so that is how we are able to represent that. And if we are able to consider it as one kind of the context, right? So basically you may take many different kinds of things, right? So if we take into an example with respect to one kind of the classes with respect to a satellite watch, right? So if we take into the example of your satellite watch, so there you may have what? Time zone. There are classes such as you may have a time zone, will be there, and then we have Greenwich Mean Time, that is GMT. It is called as universal time. Okay, so these are the classes. Universal time, right? And then you have time zone. Absolutely, time zone will be there. Universal time will be there, because in each and every particular country, right, the time will change. And then you have location, where exactly that is. Usually you may have a GPS. We have discussed in requirement elicitation. And then it is associated with one particular activity towards here. This is related with the time zone database. It is associated with a time zone, a database. It will be there, because every possible time that need to be stored. If you take it as a USA, 5.5 hours late. If you take it as one kind of in England, UK, so that is also, it has some amount of time difference. If you take Pakistan, though there also you may have some small amount of a difference. If you take Bangladesh, slightly the difference that you may make out with the given particular time with the other country. So that's why we are able to find many different kinds of things. So all these things that are to be stored with respect to one kind of a database, that we may say it as a time zone, right? So basically here different time zones that are being stored. and then we need one kind of a GPS locator. We need one kind of a GPS locator that is associated with location. So basically here GPS locator means where exactly the location is, that is to initialize such kind of things, right? So usually it based on how exactly the location is measured. So that is the design decision that we are able to say. So in that context, right, we are able to make use of GPS locator, right? So that is one more component. Next, if we take, right, so we are able to go on what, using one kind of user ID. We are able to make use of one kind of user ID. What exactly it refers? It refers to one kind of an internal mechanism that is especially used for identification we'll say. So these are some of the example classes, right? Examples of the classes in the analysis object model of your satellite watch. So if we take satellite watch an example, sat watch, we may say, if we take this as an example, right? So these are the analysis kind of object classes that are being used. So these are needed especially for demonstrating one particular example of a satellite watch. Okay, so this is about your first one particular activity or the concept, right, which we are able to say analysis object model and dynamic model. Now if we move on, right, we have the second one, that is entity, boundary and control objects. Then we will understand the second one, which we are able to say entity, we have entity, boundary, we have entity, we have boundary and control objects. Control objects. So here we will discuss about what entity, right? So basically here we are able to say entities. What we understood in the previous classes or in the previous the subject, right? Real world objects. All real world objects are entities, isn't it? Basically, you may take any particular the thing. So all real world object we may say it as kind of an entity. Okay. So usually, why exactly entity objects we will consider? We will consider here entity objects. Entity object. What exactly it will do? Entity objects will, or it represents what? Persistent information. Persistent information tracked by the system. Tracked by the system. So it represents the persistent information. Persistent information that it will track. So to tracked by the system. That is why we are able to make use of an entity objects, right? And followed by here we are able to see, we are able to find one more, that we are able to say boundary objects. So entity objects are especially used for represent the persistent information that is tracked by the system. Now if we have one kind of a boundary objects, what exactly they will do? They represents the interaction between the actors. Interaction between the actors. So that is represented interaction between the actors and the system. So that is identified by your boundary objects. Whereas if we take the control objects, if we take one kind of control objects, okay, control objects if we take, so they are especially they are in the change of realizing use cases. So these are the things that we are able to understand with respect to the three types of objects here. which actually determines here. One is the entity object. What exactly entity object will do? Entity object is responsible. What do you mean by an entity? Means it's all real world objects are entities. Okay, you have better understood that is in your database management system as and when you are making or understanding entity relationship diagram. Well and good. Now we need to understand what is the purpose of using entity object. What is the purpose of using entity object is it used to represent persistent information tracked by the system. Right? Some of the information that are being tracked by the system. To track such kind of information, right, we need to go on using here entity object, which are being majorly required, responsible for that in performing an activity. Next we have boundary objects. Boundary means it is especially for determining or representing the interaction between the actors. So you can establish one kind of interaction between the actors and the system, right? So actors means usually for all the active actors or participants that are being participated in one kind of an activity. It may be a use case, right? If we take one kind of an example into the consideration, so we need to identify the actors that we have understood in your elicitation. Now here it represents the interaction. What interaction? That a system and an actor is capable of exhibiting, right? So that is represented by boundary objects. Next, if we move on, right, we have control objects. What exactly they will do? Controlling the objects, right? So change of realizing use cases. If there is any slight change with respect to the use cases, right, that are being identified by your control objects, right? So that is why we need to have the three different kinds of objects here. One is the entity objects, second one is the boundary objects, third is the control objects. Okay, so now we need to understand the relationship, how exactly they may be represented. So representation with respect to one kind of the how exactly it may be represented. So that is there with respect to the any particular example. So let us say here I will take the entity as one as the year. I may take one kind of year. Next I may take it as month. Next I may take it as day. Next I may take it as a day. Okay. So these are the entities, year and then month and followed by day. Next, what exactly I want to change? So ultimately here I may find here change date control. It is the control object. So it is one kind of the it is one kind of an entity object. Okay, this is an entity object and this is one kind of a control object. Now it is associated with the boundary object. So here I am going with respect to exhibiting here the boundary object, right? So I will say here boundary. So boundary will be, first one is the button, right? Boundary will be button and second one will be LCD display. LCD display. So these are the two buttons or two boundary objects. Okay, these are the two boundary objects. Okay, so if we take into the consideration this is an entity. This is an entity. So here we may say it as entity objects. We may say it as entity objects and this as the control object. This as the control object and this as the boundary objects. This as the boundary object. So this is one kind of these three objects that are being related here. So that is kind of the analysis classes with respect to entity, boundary and control objects. Entity and entity, one kind of control objects and followed by boundary objects. So this is the third possible the activity which we are able to understand. Okay, so this is the second activity. So in that one, first one we have understood about analysis object model and dynamic model. Next we have understood about entity, that is entity objects, control objects and boundary objects. Now we have to understand about generalization and specialization. Okay, we will understand a little bit about generalization and specialization. So here generalization. So we will go with making one kind of the things. Generalization. next one will be specialization. What do you mean by generalization? Generalization is the modeling activity that identifies abstract concepts from low level ones to the higher one. Okay, so it is generalization. Specialization is the activity that identifies more specific concepts from a higher level one. From a higher level one. So that is termed to be as one kind of, we are able to go on what? An activity towards the specialization. We are able to find specialization. Okay, specialization. Now here we have generalization. What exactly the meaning of generalization is? Generalization means it is and it is there with respect to it represents the modeling activity. It's a modeling activity that identifies. Both will do identification only, but here that identifies the abstract concepts. Abstract means it is represented in hidden form. Hidden, not in an elaborated manner. Abstract means concise and precise. From low level ones. Low level means usually from the bottom, right? So low level ones. But here specialization is the reverse case. It actually identifies more specific concepts, right? More specific concepts. It is the abstract concepts. It is more specific concepts from higher level one. If you take this as the lower level ones, right? So this you may call it as a bottom up approach. You may call it as a bottom up, whereas this we may call it as a top down. Why? Because it starts from the higher and this goes to the bottom. So that particular activity we may say it as a top down. This specialization you may call it as expansion. You are expanding your territory, whereas bottom up approach you may call it as reduction. You are reducing it because you have started from the nodes and then you are moving towards your root. So that is why we are able to go with understanding the two different things. One is the generalization and second one is the specialization. Generalization and next one will be the the specialization. Specialization means actually it starts from the higher and then it go with the bottom. But whereas if we take the generalization, right, it goes from the low level and reaches it to the high level. Okay, for example, if I take one example, so ultimately here, let us take here, there are two classes. Let us say here, there are two classes. I will take DEF and then I will take XYZ. I will take XYZ. Two different kinds of classes. So these are the two different subclasses you may take. Okay, and these are the two classes which are being derived, which are being generalized by one class. That are being generalized by one class here. So that is one kind of, here I may say it as the ABC. So at that point of time here I may call it as ABC is the generalized class, right? So it has been originated from the DEF and XYZ and it will go with respect to ABC. So this is called generalization aspects. Generalization. The arrow will be towards what? ABC. So that we may say it as in one particular context towards your generalization, right? So here, what exactly is specialization? Specialization, if you take, right, so this DEF is there, and then this XYZ is there. So these two are specialized. These two are specialized. Okay, and then if it makes with respect to what, the root, right? So that is called ABC. That is to the specialized, one kind of more generalized class. So this is generalized. This is generalized. So these two are the two different the concepts that we will understand here. One is the generalization. Second one is the specialization. Generalization means it's a modeling activity. Both are modeling activity. Both are used for identification. Absolutely true. But what exactly they identify? They identify the abstract concepts. Abstract, not the specific. It is only, it identifies the abstract concepts from what, lower level ones. From lower level ones means usually, so they will abstract, they will in turn ABC will identify the concepts of DEF and XYZ. That is why it is more generic, it's more general. Whereas if you take specialization, right, so specialization is an activity that identifies more specific concepts from the higher level one, right, from the higher level. So at that point of time, so they are responsible for identifying the more specific items from their higher level ones. That is why we are able to say XYZ and DEF are nothing but the specialized one, right? So that is specialization. So they are nothing but the specialized activities. Whereas these ABC is referred to as the more generalized activity. So this is about the third concept here, which we are able to call this as the generalization with the specialization. Okay. So now if we move on, so these are about the concepts. You may get in your examination explain the concepts of analysis. So that is 6 mark question in your examination, right? So 2 marks each. So three concepts are there. So it carries 6 marks. Next, if we move on, right, we have to understand activities of analysis, or else we may say it as analysis activities. Analysis activities. It will be a 8 mark question in your examination. So explain the different activities that have been performed by analysis. Okay. So here we have plenty. So in that we need to go on listing what are all the activities that have been performed by this such kind of analysis. First is identifying. Everything is identification here only. So identifying entity objects. That we need to identify. Absolutely true. Entity objects. Second one, we need to identify the boundary objects. Right? So we have discussed that. That is in the entity, boundary, and followed by we have to go on understanding about control objects. Identifying control objects. Okay. First one entity, second one boundary, third one is control objects. Next, we have to go with understanding mapping use cases to objects with sequence diagram. This is the fourth activity. Next, the fifth one, mapping. So mapping use cases. How exactly we can map the use cases. Next is modeling interactions among objects. Next, sixth one, identifying associations. Association rules are associations, right? Associativity. Next is aggregation. Identifying aggregation. How exactly you may combine all these things. Next is identifying attributes. Okay, identifying attributes. Lastly, we have to go with modeling state dependent behavior of objects. Okay, there are 9 possible activities, right? So here we have to go on what understanding one by one. We have to go on understanding one by one how exactly these are being performed. Okay, so here we have to go with understanding first one entity objects, fine. Second one is the boundary, third is the control, and fourth is the mapping use cases to objects with sequence diagram, fine. Next is modeling interaction among objects, fine. Identifying associations, how we are able to identify the associations that are being found in a one particular entity or an kind of model. Next is aggregation, and next comes one kind of attributes, how the attributes are being identified. Next comes how exactly you may model state dependent behavior of objects, right? So these are some of the things that we need to understand as and when we are going with the analysis activity. Okay, so in that one we will go with respect to understanding the first one here. So that is referred to as entity objects. Okay, so how exactly we may identify the entity objects and how we are able to understand the control objects, boundary objects. Okay, all these things that we will understand in today's session. So first is identifying the entity objects. Identifying entity objects. I told you in my earlier session. So identifying entity. What do you mean by an entity? All real world objects are entities. Okay, so that is the best definition that we may frame. Basically here we may go with the same, right? So we have discussed the same example, that is in one kind of report emergency, that's use case. We have discussed that is in the requirement elicitation. So we are able to recall that particular the thing. So there we have discussed about use case name, entry condition, flow of events, and exit condition. So here we have to go on what identifying the entity objects. What are the entity objects? So here I may take in that report emergency I have taken dispatcher. So dispatcher is an entity. So what exactly? He or it is nothing but it's a police officer. What exactly he will do? He'll manage incidents. Dispatcher. Second one, emergency report. So as and when an incident will occur, right? So they need to follow. They need to report. So that is called as emergency report. Okay. Next is field officer. Field officer means police officer on duty. Next, fourth one, we have incident. Incident means situation requiring attention, right? So that is about incident. So here in your entity objects we will give the priority for 4 entities. One is dispatcher. Dispatcher is responsible for a police officer who manages incidents. A police officer who manages incidents. Okay, incidents. Emergency report means initial report about incident, initial report, right, of the about an incident, by from a field officer, So police officer, police or any officer on duty, Fourth one, incident. Incident means situation requiring attention by field officer, FOIL, call field officer. So these are the four important objects, entity objects. Here dispatcher is an entity, emergency report is an entity, field officer is an entity, incident is an entity. So there, what exactly the functionality which are being performed by dispatcher? It is nothing but what a police officer who manages incidents. We call it as any happening. We call incident means any happening which happens. Second one, emergency report. It's nothing but an initial report about an incident from a field officer. Initial report, we may call it as first report. What exactly we may do, that we may say it as the initial report about an incident. Okay, where exactly occur and in which place. All these information that are being given by the in that report, that is called emergency. Third is field officer. Field officer means it's the police officer who is on actual duty. So they are being referred to as police officer. Next we have one kind of incidents. What do you mean by an incident? It's a happening situation where exactly it requires the attention of field officer. So that particular thing we may say it as incident. So these are some of the entities need to be identified as what objects. That's why we'll call this activity as identifying entity objects. Okay, this is the first activity. Now if we move on, okay, hope you understand. And this is a simple concepts only. There is no much difficulty in understanding. Okay, identifying what exactly the second, boundary objects. We need to identify the boundary objects. Okay, so what exactly they are able to understand the things, right? So basically here they will have one kind of the identifying one kind of the boundaries, right? So they will represent the system interface with actors. They will represent the system interface with actors. So we are able to call them as boundary objects. Okay, fine. So here, what exactly identify the user interface? Fine. Second one, identify forms the user needs and notices. When multiple actors are involved in the use case, that is also need to be reported. Do not model visual aspects. All these things will be there. So now here we will list out some of the boundary objects for a report emergency. In the previous one, we have listed some of the entity objects for report emergency. So now here we are going for boundary objects in the report for the report emergency. The first one will be acknowledgement notice. I will say it as ACK notice. It is mandatory, no? Acknowledgement notice means for displaying the dispatcher's acknowledgement. It's nothing but a dispatcher's acknowledgement. When we give something, right, so he has to give one kind of an acknowledgement. So that is the acknowledgement notice. Second one is the dispatcher station. So that is computer used by the dispatcher, the system, you may say it as. Okay. Third one, we are going for using emergency report form. it is mandatory, right? So that is for the input of the report. Input of the report. Next, fourth one, field officer station. Field officer station. What exactly? Mobile computer. Fifth one, incident form. Where exactly that incident took place. So that is referred to as incident form. Okay. For the creation of incident. Form used for creation of incident. So these are some of the boundary that actually determines system interface with actors. One is the acknowledgement notice, that is actually the dispatcher acknowledgement, that is mandatory. So you may consider it as the boundary object. Second one is the dispatcher station. The computer used by the dispatcher. Computer used by the dispatcher. That's why we are able to say it as the dispatcher station. Next, third one will be emergency report form. Emergency means from where exactly you will start your input, that is the input of the report. Emergency report form. Next is field officer station. So it's a mobile computer, right? If you want to make a movement, right? So ultimately it needs to be moved. So field officer station it is, because he is wandering around here and there. It's thing, but he is not stay at one particular place. So that's why we are able to say mobile computer, right? Where exactly that incident will occur. He has to go on and visiting different kinds of circles. It's mobile computer. Next is incident form. That is especially for the creation of that incident we need to have the incident form. So these are some of the boundary objects that we need to list out for one particular a model here, that we may say it as a report emergency. So this is the boundary object that we are able to understand. So in the similar way, here we need to go with the given context that we are able to find control objects. We need to go on what? Control objects here. So control objects means usually it's nothing but our controlling. So in that control objects, in that control activity, so there are two things. One is the report emergency control. Report emergency control. Okay. Emergency control. Second one, we have manage emergency control. We have two. One is report emergency control. Second one, manage emergency control. What exactly the report emergency control will do? It reports the functions of the field of, it reports the emergency of or the the function of the field officer station. Okay. So usually here it is mandatory with respect to reporting the emergency, and it indicating what exactly it is the purpose or function of the field officer station to kind of give or to report the function of the field officer station. We need to have one particular control, which we may say it as the report emergency control. It's nothing but a station. So there the activities of that particular the field officer station will be controlled. So that's why we have report emergency control. And apart from that, here an object is created when the field officer station, right, field officer selects the report emergency button. So automatically here you may have the, it's like a draw one kind of the list box, right? So then if he selects one kind of any kind of an activity as a report emergency, so at that point of time here usually this particular object is created, which we will say it as a field officer station. Okay. So to monitor or to control all different activities of your, for reporting all different kinds of field officer station, and with that particular emergency, right, we have one kind of a control that is referred to as report emergency control. Second one is manage emergency control. What exactly it manages? Reporting the function of dispatcher station. See, this is related with your field officer station. This is related with your field officer station, whereas this is related with your dispatcher station. This is related with your dispatcher station. Dispatcher means usually when an emergency report is received. So when you place one kind of an emergency, that the report emergency control is created. Whereas if such kind of emergency is created, right? So the dispatcher manage the emergency control has been activated. So that is how we are able to find two different kinds of control and kind of control objects. We may find that is in one particular example that we have considered in our previous activity with respect to one kind of the emergency, report emergency. Reporting the report emergency, we may consider report emergency control as the one control object and manage emergency control as the second object. Report emergency control, what exactly it will do? It reporting the functions of the field officer station, and it's only created when exactly the field officer selects the report emergency button, and then manage dispatch, and it is associated with the field officer. Second one, manage emergency control is associated with the dispatcher station, and followed by it is only when the field officer selects a report emergency, then only this particular manage emergency control is created. So this is how we are able to find the managing activity towards the one kind of the control objects. One is the report emergency control and second one is the manage emergency control. And next we have another 6 different kinds of entities. So usually the activities, mapping use cases to objects with sequence diagrams, and then we have so many aspects with respect to the activities of your one kind of analysis, modeling interactions among objects with CRC, all these things that I discuss in my next particular class, right? So thank you very much. Thank you for thank you for understanding the concepts of